Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Upe, it's Navi. Hi. Just quick disclaimer, the following information is gonna be just anecdotal. It's based on my experience, what I have experienced living as an undocumented person and as DACAmented as well. Obviously, if you need any legal advice, I do not have a background in law or a law degree or anything like that. Please make sure that you speak to a certified lawyer. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the nitty gritty. Hi guys, welcome back to Upe, it's Navi. Today we're gonna cover deferred action. I did say I was gonna make an episode and kind of explain the before and after of deferred action, at least for us recipients. So yeah, let's just dive right in. Basics of deferred action. Okay, so we call it DACA for short. At least recipients call it that just because it has such a long name. But it really stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And it was passed on June 15th, 2012. Right. Before this action was passed, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what life was like for me. It wasn't fun, to say the least. There was a lot of uncertainty and fear, I suppose. I went to middle school here and high school and everything, but I didn't really understand what being undocumented meant until high school junior year, I think. Because, you know, when you're young, you don't really understand these things truly. But there are a few things that I do remember. So we're basically just going to go through them. So how did we get utilities and things of that nature? Hey guys, it's me again. I just want quick other disclaimer. So you'll hear me refer to a certain ID that undocumented people can use in the US to identify themselves as a W-7. W-7 is actually the form that you fill out to acquire that ID, which is called, actually the name of it is Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, ITIN, short, ITIN. So that's the actual name of it, but you'll hear me refer to it as a W-7. That's just the form. Also, this form can only be filled out by people that do not have a social security number in the US. If you do, don't even try to fill it out. But yeah, and it's used for identification purposes. But yeah, anytime that you hear me say W-7, I'm referring to an ITIN, Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, ITIN, short for ITIN. All right, let's move on. So when you pay taxes, anybody that pays taxes in the US gets a number that's called a W-7. Back then, you could use a W-7 to identify yourself. So you could get utilities under a W-7. You could get apartments under your W-7. So instead of using a social security number, you'd use your W-7. And you get this number, and as long as you keep paying taxes, it's fine. You can use it for things like that. Nowadays, it's not like that anymore. At least from what I have noticed. Here in Charlotte, North Carolina, it used to be like that. Now you have to put down a social security number to get gas or to put water on your name or anything like that. It wasn't like that before. So other than that, obviously you can't get a license without a social security number. My parents would basically drive without a license because you can't get a license at all. You can't like take the test or anything like that. at the time, even if you did have a license for some reason, an American license, because certain states you can't get a license without a social security number. So I had heard of people that had a license, but they couldn't really renew it, so it expired. So they drove around with expired licenses, because in North Carolina, you can't renew it if you don't have a social security number. So yeah, you basically drive around, hope that they don't stop you, and if they do, because you know you have your insurance and everything's paid for, registration and everything like that. But if it does, like if you do get stopped, they could take the car away from you. Obviously, if you don't have a license, you could, you know, whatever they want to do with you, basically. So you're at the mercy of the cops and the sheriffs and everything. One of the things that a lot of people talked about back then was the kind of car that you drove, because they stereotype you or they profile you according to your car. So I wasn't really driving back then. Fun fact, I didn't get my license until I was like 21. But it was mainly because I was just terrified of driving. I felt like I was gonna die. You know, the car was gonna flip over for any and all reasons. But yeah, so that's a fun fact about me. So that was the driving situation. When it came to your house and a place to live in, we normally rented to the owners, because obviously you can't buy a house because you can't get a loan, so you can't do that. But we would rent the house to the owner, and then that way we could just pay them cash and be okay with it. To rent apartments too, you would have to go to a complex that let you rent an apartment using your W-7. Not all of them did it back then, obviously. That's basically how that worked. There were certain things that you couldn't do, obviously. You couldn't get any sort of government help at all, like if you don't have a social security number. And actually, even now that I have a social security number, there are a lot of benefits that you can't get. But yeah, so back then you couldn't get any, you know, no stamps or anything like that, no food stamps or like pension, anything like that. No, you really can't take any advantage of that. Obviously, because you don't have a social security number, there are certain jobs that you can do, as long as they pay cash or under the table, you can do those jobs. If you have to, otherwise you won't be able to work. You won't be able to really you couldn't really get a full-time job with benefits and all that. Because of that reason, back then, if anything happened, you couldn't really go to the hospital. I mean, you could, but nobody ever wanted to, because whatever happened, you'd have to pay out of pocket. And so you basically just pray that you don't die and hope for the best, because you can't really afford to pay out of pocket with the prices that you have in the US for medical assistance of any type. So yeah, I didn't go to a hospital for like 10 years, something like that. Yeah, because 10 years, 11 years. I'm gonna say 12 years, just because. The good thing about that is that Charlotte has certain places where their doctors donate their hours. So you can get medical services for a really low price or for free, depending on what your income is or what your situation is, which that is absolutely great. And if you know where to find those places, that's amazing as well. And you don't get food stamps. So if you are struggling to eat or to put food on the table, there are also quite a few places here in Charlotte, or there used to be. I would have to get reacquainted with it. And if you guys want me to drop a video about places in Charlotte and North Carolina where you can go to get food if you are not making it and you need a little bit of assistance, of food assistance, or also the clinics, the free clinics and things like that, I can definitely make a video later on. But yeah, you could go to these places and get food that is donated by grocery stores. These like food banks, I guess. These food banks have food from several different places. The one that we used to go to had a lot of food from, I think it was Whole Foods. In Panera used to donate a lot of food as well, which is one of the reasons why I love Panera. It reminds me so much of that time. It was just because you struggle at a certain time in your life doesn't mean that you didn't love that or that you don't feel nostalgia over it, right? So yeah, sidetracked. But yeah, that's why I love Panera. But yeah, so that is what it looked like before deferred action. Please take into account that all of this still happens for those that do not fall under the deferred action. So all the people that couldn't apply to deferred action, that are not recipients of deferred action, are still living this way. They're still driving around hoping that they don't get stopped and their car taken away, or at worst get deported. There are still people that live like that. It's been a few years now that we've been living with a work permit and living with a social security number. So a lot of our utilities back then, when we applied, once we got the social security number, we went ahead and got, those of us that could, got their licenses right away, made sure that they could equip themselves with the proper documentation in that regard. And then later on, when Charlotte started asking people to put their social security numbers down for their services to be turned on, then we started taking a utility and putting it under our name to make sure that we still had it activated and that they wouldn't cut our water or turn our electricity off or anything like that, the gas and everything like that. So yeah, that's how that happened. All the information that I got relating to DACA and its requirements and everything, I got it from the USIS page, the U.S. immigration website, and I'll go ahead and put that URL, that address below. So if you want to read more about it, learn a little bit more about it, you can definitely go ahead and go there. Also, for those of you that just came in, if you're new to my channel, please make sure you hit the bell to subscribe and join us in future videos. But anyway, so yeah, let's move forward to 2012. There are a few requirements that you need to meet to be able to apply to deferred action. Side note, 2 of my siblings and I, we did our own paperwork. So I know a lot of people, especially in the Hispanic community, you have a lot of people that are like, oh no, you certainly have to get a lawyer. Like, there is no way you're gonna get deferred action if you don't have a lawyer. That is a complete and utter lie. That's not true. You should always get a lawyer if you have special circumstances. For example, if you came to the US by means other than a plane, you should probably get a lawyer. 2, if you have any sort of record, which you can't, according to the rules, you can't apply if you have a record. But if it's like a misdemeanor or something like that, I think you could be able to, maybe with a lawyer. But yeah, if you don't have any of those special circumstances, you came here in a plane with a visa, with all this stuff, and you meet the requirements, literally all you have to do is read the instructions verbatim and you'll be fine. Well, hopefully you'll be fine. I can tell you I've renewed deferred action. My siblings and I have renewed our DACA work permits and everything like that 3 times, and we've done it by ourselves all 3 times. I'm just laying this out there because I have heard crazy stories about the amount of money that lawyers charge people to submit paperwork that literally has the instructions on it. They also have the instructions in Spanish as well, so yeah, you know. But you know, if you're still a little bit freaked out and you feel like you're gonna mess it up or anything like that, you can definitely go ahead and contact that lawyer. Just make sure they're not charging you $4,000 for something that you could be filing yourself. That's all it states. By the way, there used to be a way that you could serve in the army without having a green card, and then you could apply for a green card then. But currently there's not anymore. There are a lot of veterans as well that are undocumented and continue to be undocumented even after being veterans. So this deferred action wanted to cover them as well. Those that were in the army for such a long time, were even veterans, but were never actually able to apply for any type of documentation. But yeah, so that's what it is. Once you have everything like that, you get a work permit, and then you have to go to the Social Security office to get your Social Security number. Keep in mind that the work permit isn't a green card, or in any shape or form does it allow you. The work permit that you get from deferred action basically says you can work legally and you can drive legally, and we won't persecute you unless you have a criminal record, you know, to deport you. That's all it says. No benefits, nothing like that. Just because you have a Social Security number does not mean that now you get a pension. You don't get any pensions. You don't get you don't really get what's that called, Medicare or anything like that either. So you don't really get any benefits, any food stamps, none of that. We don't apply for that. We also cannot leave the country, so no matter, I mean, you can leave the country, but then if you come back, the immigration officers might be like, yeah, nah, you can go back. So if you leave the country, you run the risk of not being able to return to the US. You used to be able to get a special permission to go in certain occasions if you were going on like a work trip or something like that. You could possibly go back then, but then Trump happened and they got rid of that. So I don't know if Biden's gonna come up with it again or what that's gonna be like. But yeah, so I haven't left this country in 14 years. And you can't leave the country ever again until you are able to apply to a green card, a permanent green card, that is. If it's temporary, it's not recommended that you leave the country either. I don't know why. I would have to find out a little bit more about that. But yeah, so yeah, you can't really visit your family or anything like that. A lot of people think that you get a lot of benefits from it, and it's like, I don't know who you've been talking to, but we don't get anything other than just you are not now able to apply to a full-time job, which I did for the first time this last year. I finally was able to work a full-time job and I got benefits. So I went to I got my checkup and I made sure that everything was alright. I even visited an OBGYN and everything because it was a part of my benefits list, which I was really excited for because I hadn't been to the doctors in a really, really long time. So that was exciting. So after that happened, which was when I was transitioning from high school to undergrad, I graduated with a 4.0 GPA and a really high SAT score. So I've always been an A honor roll student, always been that. So, you know, I figured I'd be able to get a path. You know, I would be able to find a path to go to school. Tough luck. That's not how it works, apparently. You can have the best scores in the school. But if you have a very large school as well, you have to be like genius, like you have to be valedictorian. And I had really good scores, yes, but I wasn't valedictorian. And with deferred action, you get out of state tuition. So I couldn't really go to the community college either, because you get out of state and that's expensive as heck. I could not pay for that, couldn't afford it. I tried to apply to FAFSA. Can't apply to FAFSA because I don't know. As deferred action, you're not allowed to. You cannot get government help for school either. I tried to apply to scholarships. 90% of scholarships are for US citizens or for green card holders. So that didn't go very well either. I was pretty much screwed hard. I was really depressed and really sad for right after the graduation, because I did get accepted to a few universities, and I even got accepted to the university I was dreaming of going to, which was the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Yeah, they actually did accept me, and they gave me a scholarship, but honestly, it was like I think it was $36,000 tuition a year, and they gave me $3,000 a year. So I was like, oh, well, no. I mean, it is what it is, you know, like, it is what it is. But we can't really get loans either, or like, we couldn't before, at least not federal loans. You would have to get a private loan now. Before, you couldn't get one either. I think now you probably can't get a private loan, but so, you know, I figured I was screwed. All that work for nothing, you know, all those A's, all those honor societies, but as it happens, my dad had gotten in contact with this lady that worked for the Latin Coalition here in Charlotte. There's a Latin Coalition, and this lady basically went around finding deferred action top of their class students to go to private universities and get them a full ride to make sure that they could get their education, which is basically what I did, what she did with me. She took me to Johnson C. Smith University, JCSU, which is an HBCU here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for those of you that don't know what an HBCU means, it means historically black college or university. So she took me there, and they basically sat me in a room, had me do like my basic paperwork. Then you had to take your transcripts and your SAT score and everything like that. They basically calculate a certain amount of money to give you as a scholarship to get your degree, depending on your scores and basically quote unquote merit. So I got almost a full ride. I had to pay, I think, $1,000 a year, which is considerably not much at all, considering how much it was. But they don't only do that for undocumented students either. They do it for every student. So if you have really great scores in your SAT or in your GPA is really top notch as well, you could definitely go ahead. Well, back then, I don't know if they still do it, but you could try and go to JCSU and ask them, give them your information, and they'll give you a scholarship, because that's how they work. It's not only for undocumented students. The reason why she took us there was because they also did it for DACA recipients as well. When we got deferred action, like I said, I had my license. I turned 21, I got my license. My brother and my other sister already had their licenses. Like, they went ahead and did that right away after they got their social security number. I just took a while because, like I said, I was terrified of driving, especially on the highway. It was terrifying. Now I'm not scared at all. I've driven through Atlanta. Like, I'm okay. I'm all right. However, you still couldn't travel at all, so there's nothing you can do about that. Mainly, honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I want for Biden to help us figure out a way so that to make a way for us to be able to apply to a green card is because I haven't visited my family in 13 years. 14. I keep saying 13, but it's actually 14 because the year just changed. My maternal grandparents died over there, so I couldn't visit them. I couldn't go to the burial, nothing. My paternal grandparents, they're still alive. My grandfather is 94. So, you know, he's pushing it. He really is pushing it. And I'm hoping that coming future I'll be able to visit my grandfather, you know, before he leaves us. But yeah, that's a huge reason why I've always loved to travel. And these few years I've been traveling the US, obviously before Corona and everything happened. But yeah, I just want to be able to travel and go places without worrying about whether I can come back or not to the US. So yeah, that's basically what it is now. Like I said, you don't really get any benefits other than just work, drive, maybe not get deported if you don't join, you know, like protests, because, you know, after Black Lives Matter, if you were found at a protest, it would try to deport you. So that was, I went to one, and I wanted to go to more, and I truly did apologize to all my Black friends, and I said, listen, I went to one and I'll support you from the sidelines. But they were literally trying to deport people that were caught in these protests. So we have to be very, very careful. DACA recipients have to be really careful. So anyways, yeah, that's all I have for you today. If you guys want a video about resources for undocumented folk in Charlotte, North Carolina, I can make a video about that. I can also talk to you guys a little bit more about the process of deferred action, the type of paperwork that you need to include, and what that process looked like for me. But I think the next video is probably going to be something a little bit more lighthearted, because I feel like I've been so serious these first two videos. I need to like lighten it up a little bit.